Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Quantum Productions, my co-host Stacie, here to talk about the original Quantum Leap, Season 4, Episode 22, titled A Leap for Lisa, and this would be the season finale of Season 4. The episode's description reads as follows. While trying to save a married woman, Sam changes history, and Al is sent to the gas chamber, giving Sam a new observer. The episode was written by Donald P. Belzerio, and he gets sole writing credit on this episode. And the episode was directed by James Whitmore Jr. This was his only directorial stint this season, but he has quite a few in Season 5. The episode takes place on June 25th, 1957, and originally aired on May 20th, 1992. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a sport-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Quantum Productions, where additional content can be discovered, both Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. All right, shout-outs this week.
All right.
We got Ashley Wright, who had a birthday recently.
Happy birthday.
Yep, September 24th was his birthday. Happy birthday, Ashley Wright. Maggie Smith, rest in peace. We just learned today that she passed away. Maggie Smith, of course, being the actress who played Professor McGonagall on the Harry Potter series, as well as appearing in Hook, and I believe she was also in Mrs. Doubtfire. Do you remember this actress at all?
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure she was in that movie as well. Alpa, when he saw the previous episode, Stand Up, it made me wonder how many mafia or organized crime episodes there were. And it seems like there was quite a bit, but when I really think about it, I can only name 5. After reviewing the titles of all 6 seasons, I believe he means 5 seasons. Unless he's talking about the new series, in which case it'd be 7 seasons. But he came up with Double Identity, Her Charm, Permanent Wave, Piano Man, and now Stand Up. And you could say episodes like Her Charm and Permanent Wave are organized crime and not necessarily mafia themed. I threw in Tale of Two Sweeties because that also seemed kind of mafia themed. Sure. I'm not sure though that person was a mafia or just a bookie of some type. But
yeah, I mean, what's the difference? Unless they explicitly tell us
right.
what their organization is, it's all the same thing. Now, if you were to talk about the new series, there are definitely a few episodes there as well.
Yes,
including the pilot.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And he found my joke about Ben leaping in to, basically clean up the mess that Sam made at the end of the episode with the pie. He suggests, and by the way, that joke was actually inspired by him in the first place. He basically suggested that maybe an evil leaper could leap in to punish Sam for his activities with nitroglycerin in the banana cream pie, which means it would go basically explode, and that would create an even bigger mess, by the way. So Mimi Galb, she suggested that the Glendale, Arizona thing was because it was actually written in the original script, which could make sense because if the fandom read that script, that's where they could have gotten their information from and why that was pretty much spread everywhere. And she loved his oh boy in the previous episode, basically during the stand-up routine. She likes this episode because we get a lot of information about Al. And she pointed out that Kevin Sorbo was the actor whose name I could not come up with, who was in Hercules: The New Adventures, The Adventures Continues. And that's it for shoutouts for this week.
Okay.
All right, so Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode?
All right, so A Leap for Lisa, one of the classic top tier episodes. It's on your list if you're gonna trim this series down to just a handful of important episodes. This is one of them. One thing I found myself while I was taking these notes is I kind of tore this episode apart a little bit.
Oh, really?
With logic fallacies and a bunch of questions. And I hate that I did that because it is a great episode and I love the episode. So if I come off sounding a little more critical, it's not because I have a problem with the episode, but it's just because I found lots of little things to comment on.
Gotcha.
One thing that I don't know if I ever noticed before is how referential this episode is to Genesis. There are so many little nods to Genesis and callbacks, and I was thinking about it when they were making this, they thought this might be their series finale. They were in danger of being canceled.
Right.
They didn't know they were going to get a 5th season. In fact, things were looking pretty dire at that point.
Yes.
So this could have been it. This could have been our final episode.
Yep.
And I think that's why there were so many callbacks to the pilot.
Makes sense.
Which is really interesting to think about it that way. You know, like I don't think I'd ever looked at it that way before.
So what's fun about this episode, there's a lot of fun things about this episode, and we'll certainly talk about them as we go. But the interesting thing to me, and this is a great episode, I should point that out, I should say that at least, is that up until this point, Sam has managed to change his own life for the better at least twice. The two opportunities that Al had to get his life changed, failed both times. There was, MIA. And then the very next episode after that, where he could have been come home earlier as a POW, and Sam failed to do that. Of course, he didn't say anything to Sam about that. But this is the first opportunity that Al has had a chance to change something in his life for the better.
Right.
So so at this point the
and
score,
it doesn't go so good for most of the episode.
no, actually it changes his life for the worse quite a bit for most of it.
You mentioned that Al had a chance. Now, literally, Al did have a chance to fix everything.
Yes.
Right at the beginning, and he's the one who screwed up.
Yep.
By dilly-dallying and reminiscing and not figuring out what he's here to do, which was a very big mistake for him. Mm-hmm. This whole thing could have been resolved in 2 minutes if he had just paid attention to the date.
Well, I would argue that the end result is even better than what could have been accomplished here.
Sure. But that's not what the leap was about.
Right, yeah.
Because otherwise this isn't where he would have gone. Mm-hmm. And it brings up, a point about, well, who's leaping you? They don't have control over the leaps. But they do in this point at the end.
Right.
They decide where to go and what to change. Mm-hmm. As opposed to the force that's leaping Sam around. So
right.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And it also calls back to, a leap home where we learned, hey, we can do that. Mm-hmm. Not a leap home, a leap back.
Right.
Where we called, we can target leap now. We know how to do that.
Yep.
And it also reminds you of, but we're not doing it. Why are we not doing that more often?
Right. For instance, I'm pretty sure we brought this up. We had that conversation where, we could bring Sam home for a little bit, have him spend some time with his wife.
Right. He just needs to
Al
tag team.
Tag
team with somebody. Or bring a whole crew of people in and have them each take, a week, 2 days a month or something and take turns. One leap at a time.
So the score, by the way, is Sam changing his life for the better 2. Yeah. Al 1 at this point. Before it was just 0. He was the goose egg. So I just wanted to point that out. Do we have anything else to say before diving in?
We might as well just get right to the scene by scene.
One more thing, I do have to mention this. Okay, so after this episode, this series is going on the shelf for a while.
Yes, this is the end of season 4. We're going to be done talking about Quantum Leap until our fall lineup is over, and then we'll probably get back to it.
So sometime in late November, early December, we'll probably pick it up. But we do have a surprise coming in the fact, I guess it's not going to be a surprise because I'm going to spoil it now. We have a Quantum Leap episode coming on October 31st. I also
did post it everywhere already.
Fair enough.
I posted our calendar.
On October 31st, we are going back to revisit the Boogeyman.
You're not supposed to say it.
Oh, dang it. I'm already screwing it up. Okay. Well, so for a while, this series is going to go on the shelf, except we are doing that in October, late October, so look for that at the end of the month.
And also something Quantum Leap related. This is our last chance to plug it. This is our last time talking about Quantum Leap. We're going in October to see Scott Bakula. Again.
For the third time this year. We're going to go see him in Lincoln, and of course we'll have some type of podcast material on that as well. I don't know that that's going to be the 2-hour marathon thing that we did.
Well, we'll have to wait and see first how the weekend plays out and what we have to talk about.
Right. And
then how the heck we're going to fit it into our schedule. Right. But eventually, you'll hear something about Mr. Lincoln.
So, we might not be talking Quantum Leap for most of October, but we still have plenty of things dropping. We still have plenty of content. If you're a fan of Halloween movies, we got some stuff going on with that. We got From, Sullivan's Crossing. So if you're
a new show,
yes,
Teacup, airing on Peacock throughout the month of October.
So if you're a fan of listening to the sounds of our voices, you will have plenty of opportunities to hear it throughout October.
More than any other month in history, I would say.
Yes, pretty much. All right, so diving in. Sam leaps in on a beach, and he's in the water, and is soon joined by someone calling him Bingo, who is clearly naked, though we don't get... it's basically shot in a way that you don't get a clear definition of any particular body part, but she is very much naked. And they end up making out, and credits. And by the way, this is Lisa, played by Terry Farrell, best known as playing Dax on 6 seasons of Deep Space Nine. She has 37 credits in total, including 94 episodes of Becker. She was a series regular on that. An episode of Family Ties, and an episode of The Twilight Zone.
She is also in Hellraiser 3. Since we're talking about October and
yes, yep, that makes sense.
Bring that up. And I thought it was funny when he leaps in. He finds a pile of clothes.
Yep.
On the ground, and he picks up her bra. And the first thing he does is look down to see if it's his.
Right.
Because he's like, "Who am I in this scenario?"
Right. Yeah. So when we come back from the credits, Sam is still making out with her, and then he hears a knock at the door, and he wakes up in his room. That was just all a dream.
It was a dream, and I think this is the one and only time Sam leapt into a dream. I know we've talked
positive
about this before, but this is the spot where we're supposed to talk about it.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever happened before or since.
Nope, that's the only time.
I don't think Ben ever did that either.
No.
He had dreams.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you would experience the host dreams.
And I was wondering, do you think maybe it's because of the connection he has with Al?
Perhaps.
Because they're already, like, mind merged.
Yeah, because they've already had that experience.
The leap back and their whole neuron meson, whatever
Probably,
nonsense. Like, is it because he's Al that he is able to just connect with the host in a deeper level than a typical leap?
Probably.
Or is it just coincidence that he leapt in during a dream?
Who knows? So he meets Commander Hugh Dobbs, played by Larry Brandenburg. 67 credits for him, including an episode of The West Wing, Charmed, and Jag. He points to a picture of Lisa and asks if that is his girlfriend or fiancée, and Sam says he isn't sure. Oh, is it one of those deals, perhaps? Dobbs thinks. Dobbs' Navy reserves, and it becomes apparent that his host is in some legal trouble. He's asked about Saturday, June 22nd, when the wife of Commander Riker was murdered and Me Too'd. I can't, of course, say that word without getting demonetized. Dobbs asks if he's guilty, and Sam says that he's not, but initially he seems like he's not very competent on that.
I mean, he doesn't know, right?
Right, yeah.
He's like, I didn't kill anybody. Well, no, you didn't, Sam, but obviously you're not you.
Right, yes.
And, you gotta be careful speaking when you don't know anything about the situation.
Right.
It's not like he's never leapt into somebody guilty before. He certainly has.
Yes.
And you don't know what you're here to do. Maybe you're here to confess.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing I want to point out is, why the heck does Bingo have a framed photo on his dresser
of a married woman?
Of the married woman he's having an affair with.
That's a good question.
That seems a little obvious.
Yeah.
And, like, later we'll have the conversation, like, oh, if you come forward, it's going to ruin both our careers because, adultery in the Navy is, like, a big no-no.
Right.
So why the heck would you have a framed photo of her just sitting out on your desk?
Well, apparently that had no effect on Al's career whatsoever because she did initially confess, and it didn't affect Al at all.
Right. But they have a conversation like, oh, it's going to ruin us both.
Right. Well, I mean...
you think you'd be a little more discreet then if you have that concern.
That's Sam talking and not necessarily the objective reality. I think, that was Sam's comment, and he doesn't really know, how this would affect anything. He's just kind of talking out of his ass at this point, I think. But the conversation is interrupted by Chip, who says he has something important to discuss with him. He's played by Jeffrey Corbett, 62 credits for him, including the movie The Little Things, which is pretty recent, an episode of Frasier, and 2 episodes of Jag.
He was also in a recent Christmas movie called The Noel Diary.
Oh.
That's the one starring Justin Hartley.
Okay. Maybe that's one we should check out for Christmas month.
Maybe.
If we can find
it. I watched it.
Did you?
It was available last year.
Was it any good?
It was all right. It was a
Christmas movie. Okay, yeah. So Dobbs goes to use the head, and Chip asks him how he is, and then he asks, how would he like to see Lisa? And to do this, Sam has to pretend to be sick.
Now, I want to mention that Chip brings up Doc Berger, who's going to get him in a room with Lisa, Doc Berger is also the name of a character from Genesis.
Oh, do you think it's the same one?
Well, I thought that until we actually meet him in a minute.
It's not the same actor.
Not
because
the same
that
actor.
that was the actor in the pilot played by W.K. Stratton, right?
Right.
Yeah. So he has to pretend like he's sick. Dobbs comes out telling him that he will have to have questions for Chip as well. Chip tells him that Bingo was not the only one to dance with Commander Riker's wife that night, that everybody pretty much was. And Sam pretends to be in pain using very medical-esque jargon that a person in his position would not know.
It makes Dobbs question, like, did you go to medical school?
Right. And Dobbs says, we better get him to sickbay. And once there, Lisa enters, and the ruse is pretty obvious to Dobbs.
Yeah, well, first we meet the doctor,
right?
He's credited as flight surgeon, which I thought's really weird because they gave him a name, Doc Berger,
right?
So I'm not sure why he's not credited as Doc Berger, but they call him flight surgeon. He's played by Jack Stauffer. He was in 3 episodes of Battlestar Galactica and an episode of Growing Pains. And yeah, he examines Sam and he's like, okay, I'm going to send in the nurse.
Right. Chip gets Dobbs out of the room, who is notable. He knows what's going on.
Yeah, because he recognizes her.
Of course.
Because there's a picture
right.
on Al's dresser.
Right. So Sam learns that Lisa is married, and she was with him Saturday night. But Sam tells her not to testify. He thinks he's there to prove his innocence without involving her, and that's the aforementioned conversation that you brought up. Dobbs re-enters the room, and Lisa exits. Dobbs repeats the question, is this his girlfriend or fiancée? And apparently the answer is neither. At night, Sam admires Lisa's picture when Al appears at the 11-minute and 36-second mark. And Sam wonders where the heck he's been. Al says he's been in the waiting room talking to the kid that he's left into, and that he came in on the flight line. Amused, Al says he's been spending quite a bit of time talking to the kid he's left into. I just said that. Sam says that the kid has more women than Al does. Okay, at this point he only knows about Lisa. So what is Sam talking about? It's not like he's like been like
Well, he's also like something going on with Marcy.
Okay.
So he knows like he's in trouble because supposedly something happened with this woman.
Okay, that's 2 women.
That's 2.
Al generally has way more women than that, but that's
sure. But it was a good joke.
Yes. And Al thinks this is funny and tells him to look in the mirror.
Yeah, he's like, you haven't looked in the mirror yet, have you?
Sam does so and realizes he's left into Al as a younger man. And this is the mirror image is played by, and who actually is in the episode,
right?
Is played by Jamie Walters, I believe it is.
Jamie Walters,
who was actually in Genesis, the first episode of the series as well.
Wait, what?
Something. Yeah. When I looked into his credits, he was actually in the first episode. I don't remember what he was credited as.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
And that's not something I know. I'm going to have to look into that.
Okay.
Because I'm confused.
Yeah.
He is most well known for being in 90210. He was in 40 episodes of that. I don't have his character's name written down. Ray something? Ray Pruitt?
Ray Pruitt, okay.
Ray something. He was in 40 episodes of that and reprised his role in the Revival series that came out a couple years ago. And he also wrote 10 episodes of 90210.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think he's done a whole lot else other than a couple of one-off appearances. But I think he makes a pretty good choice to play young Al.
He physically looks like Al. Whether he sounds like him or not, we will not be able to know because unfortunately they make the really silly decision to overdub his lines with Dean Stockwell.
Right, they used Dean Stockwell's voice, which they altered.
Yeah.
And they didn't alter it well.
It still sounds like a 60-year-old man as opposed to a 20-year-old kid.
Right.
So it's kind of silly.
It is kind of silly. I mean, it's not like they haven't done weird things before, like, dubbing Genesis Tina.
Right, yeah.
With Deborah Pratt's voice
for
no reason whatsoever.
Right. Okay, so Sam, out of amusement, calls Al Bingo.
Al says, he does another call back to Genesis. He says, ain't that a kick in the butt?
Oh, yes,
which
that's
is
right.
one of his lines from Genesis, talking about leaping in general.
Right. So the Al in the waiting room does not know that Al is him, and he basically he thinks that he is his Uncle Jack, and this is some practical joke of Chip's, and we later learned, here we learn what exactly happened to Chip in the original history, that he died on some mission somewhere.
10 years from now. He says we flew together for 10 years before he died. And Al's like, oh, I gotta go see Chip. I gotta go reconnect with him.
And Sam was like, well, wait, you gotta tell me what I'm here to do. And this is the first time that Al has even considered this.
Right. Now, I'm very confused by this.
Right.
So he's so preoccupied talking to himself and reminiscing and wanting to visit his friends that he never checked the date. If you're working a time travel project and the reason you're leaping places is to change lives for the better, to fix mistakes, and he's you. He's in your life. He's possibly changing things. There's something positive that can happen here. Mm-hmm. Why would the first thing you do not be check what date it is and figure out what you're here for?
Right.
And knowing Al, maybe figure out a list of half a dozen other things you want to accomplish while he's here?
Right.
But no, he never checks the date and then doesn't even realize, oh, this is the day Lisa dies.
Right.
I don't get that.
No.
I don't understand how Al would be that stupid. How Ziggy wouldn't have, said, hey, Al, we got a mission here.
Right.
Anybody in control, been okay, Al, let's talk about your life.
Right. Yeah. So Al's looking into the date and then realizes what the date is and starts to panic. He centers in on Lisa, but is powerless to stop what is about to happen, which is she is crying and she ends up crashing the car and dying in a fiery car wreck.
Yeah. Very bad. And he's like, he's screwed up.
Right.
Because, yes, he could have saved her life.
Right.
By just telling Sam what's about to happen, and Sam could have stopped her from driving.
So, back with Sam, he tells Al that it wasn't his fault, and no.
It's his fault.
Yeah, it's
his fault.
Absolutely his fault.
I mean, it's not his fault. It happened the first time.
Right, no.
It's his fault they didn't stop it from happening. And I have another question. So, he said he spent 6 hours talking to himself.
Yes.
That's why Sam's been here for 6 hours.
Okay.
6 hours. In a military uniform. Being investigated by a lawyer. You're having legal questions answered. Going to a doctor's visit. How has nobody said Calavici? Walking around this base for 6 hours. Nobody has said his name?
Yeah, I think they try to make it seem like everybody just calls him Bingo.
Sure, everybody calls him Bingo, but there's some formal stuff happening during this time.
Right, which you would figure...
And he's wearing a uniform. Is it his name on it?
Yeah.
I didn't notice his name on it, but this is a formal stuff happening. The doctor's visits, there's going to be paperwork and...
Right, yes.
How do you not know in 6 hours that you're Al?
Yeah, that always kind of...
If it was half hour, an hour maybe, but 6 hours, you've been here all day.
Right.
Somebody had to have said his name by now. It's got to be on the door.
You must have run into some commanding officer who was Ensign Calvici, but apparently that never happens.
Right.
But yeah.
And similarly, if Al's been talking to Bingo for 6 hours, and Bingo knows he's being questioned about Marcy's death because he was expecting Dobbs. How does that never come up in those 6 hours?
Right.
He never mentions the situation he's in at all in 6 hours.
You can chalk that up to the Swiss cheese memory effect, that he just does not remember those events.
But what's Sam talking to him, or what's Al talking to him about?
I don't know.
For 6 hours without mentioning your current state of affairs.
I don't think he was talking to him the entire 6 hours that he was there. I think he was indulging in his nostalgia, actually in the leap itself, not just talking to him the entire time. But yes, I do see your point.
This is everything relevant to this kid right now. So something that jogged Al's memory should have came up by now.
Right. So back with Sam. Oh yeah, okay. I already said that because he's basically saying it's not his fault. It was.
It was definitely his fault.
But Al thinks he was there. To basically save Lisa, and he thinks that this was Sam's mission. So Sam asks, if that's the case, why haven't I leapt? And Al says, because he didn't save her. And Sam comes back with my favorite line of the episode. Yeah. The first time I've ever heard this.
All of a sudden...
Yes. Success has nothing to do with leaping. You know that. Well, I don't know that.
I don't know that either.
This is the first time I'm hearing of this. And, okay, so they from this point on, they will repeat that line.
Right.
But this is the first time that we're saying that.
Right.
One, we've never heard that before. And two, why would you say that? That eliminates all tension because it doesn't matter what happens now on the leap.
They inserted that into the sleep to give us a reason why he hasn't leapt out.
Mm-hmm.
Or wait. See, it's so confusing that I'm losing my own train of thought.
Mm-hmm.
If they, because he was there to save Lisa.
Yes.
I mean, what else was he there to do?
Right. That's it, basically.
But see, I'm saying I'm not here to save Lisa.
So there must be something else.
Because I would have leapt.
Right.
But if we're saying that, okay, so if we're going with the conceit that failure means you're stuck.
Yes.
Which is what we've assumed until now. I'm pretty sure they've even questioned that before.
Right, yes.
And it's what they go with in the revival series, by the way.
Yep.
We stick with that.
Well,
if you fail, you're stuck.
That's the thing. That's the thing, is people who criticize the new series will be like, well, why is he all of a sudden saying that if you fail, you're stuck here? Well, in the old series, they said, success has nothing to do with leaping. Okay, he says that from season 4 on, perhaps. But
at the end of season 4. Like, right. Really one season.
Right. But before that, they were always saying that if you fail your mission, you're going to get stuck here.
Right.
And of course, they didn't know that for a fact, but that's what they were assuming.
It was always their kind of going hypothesis, right? Is you might get stuck here. There's a really good chance of that happening. Like, it came up before.
Now all of a sudden we're hearing success has nothing to do with leaping.
So what I was getting at is, if we're going with the theory that, well, you're going to get stuck here if you fail, and you now failed.
Yes.
The focus of our attention would have to be, oh, now you're stuck here.
Right.
And they didn't. That's not what the episode was about.
Right.
The episode was about how can we make this worse and then fix it. So they wanted to remove the thought of you're stuck here is not the problem.
I guess, but it at the same time destroys the entire tension of the entire series.
Right.
Because basically now, it doesn't matter what happens.
Well, now we need to bring in evil leapers to have a new problem.
Right.
And they, success has nothing to do with them leaping, because every time they fail, they're like, oh, I'm gonna go, bye.
Basically. All right, so Al looks into it, and Ziggy says it's to prove Al's innocence, which, of course, is something that surprises Al, because he was never tried, because Lisa was his alibi. And Sam, at this point, realizes that Sam
gives a really big oh boy.
Yes.
And he says to Al, ask Ziggy what the odds are that you're going to be court-martialed.
And Al thinks this is ridiculous, but he does it anyways, and now the odds are 3-1, and even money that he will be convicted. Sam breaks the bad news, but Al is kind of glad, because no one will be gossiping over her grave this time. Al decides to go live the best of the times after living through the worst. You're not going to stick around and try to figure out what to accomplish now? There's no discussion of that whatsoever, what else he could be there to possibly do. I mean, I guess they just said that it's to prove Al's innocence.
Right.
But...
Except that's not what you left here to do.
Right.
Because that wasn't a problem in the original history.
Right.
So why did he leap here?
Right. To save Lisa.
To save Lisa?
Right.
And now what?
Yes.
Because if we're going with, if you fail, you're going to leap.
Right.
Then that's not what he's here for either.
Well, now I guess he's screwed up history.
So because he screwed up history, the Force leaping him's giving him an opportunity to fix it.
Mm-hmm. All right,
it's very convenient that he's allowed to live here to fix all of this.
Right.
If it was any other leap, you would think that we'd have moved on by now. If
Sam had left at this point, then Al would be dead.
Well, not yet, because it was still 50-50.
Yeah.
We have a whole new problem. But it's a problem Sam introduced, though.
It is a problem that Sam introduced, but it's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse. And, it's something we've mentioned before, where it's like Sam's fixing problems, but the only reason those problems exist is because of something he did in the first place.
Right.
And it's something we've talked about, and they don't necessarily address a lot in show.
Right.
But this is a great example of it.
Yeah.
You changing history is the reason we have the problem that you're supposedly here to fix.
Right.
So what were you here for originally? And we could ask that question of a dozen other episodes.
Right.
We have, where it's the whole thing that you're here for didn't exist until you were here.
Right. Yeah.
For example, Permanent Wave, where you said, the only reason that kid witnessed it is because Tam told him to go next door.
Right, exactly, which is something the host would not have done in the original history. So he goes to the bar where all his old mates are, and we get the story of how Al got his name, which predictably had something to do with sex. In the bar, Dobbs is talking to Chip. When we learned that... by the way, Riker's Commander Riker is a clear reference to Star Trek The Next Generation, which, of course, has Will Riker as a character. They're very different in temperament, but I forgot to mention that. But so that's another little fun Easter egg for this episode. We learned that Riker's wife initiated recruits by sleeping with them, and it was a first-time, last-time deal. It would happen once and never again.
And also that her husband often beat her.
Yes.
They had a very strange relationship. Chip avoids the question when asked if he slept with Marcy.
Right.
And then when Dob asks about Bingo's initiation, Chip says that Bingo never slept with her because he was already involved with Lisa when he got here. Which is
a very curious moral stand.
Yeah.
You're cool with sleeping with the married woman, but you're not going to sleep with
He turned Marcy down because he is in a relationship with married Lisa.
Right. Yes.
Which also seems a little inconsistent with the Al that we know.
Right. I mean, maybe he changed as he got older.
I think what we can say is Al and Lisa really had something.
Yes.
And if she wasn't married, perhaps they would have ended up together.
Perhaps.
You know, he obviously was very torn up about her death, but he's got her picture.
Mm-hmm.
He was loyal to her.
Yes.
Like, I don't know. It's strange. The other people we met during all of this is... I lost it. Stacker and Plummer are the two friends that are telling the story, and we see throughout this. Stacker's played by Jeff Nowinski. He was in The Count of Monte Cristo. He was in an episode of The Brady's, like the 80s show.
Yep.
And Plummer is played by Ivan Geyerson.
Huh.
He was in an episode of Charles in Charge. He was in a movie called Pinocchio's Revenge. And seeing this movie in his credits was a light bulb moment for me. This movie's real. I remember seeing this movie years and years and years and years and years ago.
But you somehow suspected it wasn't real?
And I've never heard of it or seen any reference to it ever again. It's the worst B-horror movie ever made.
Okay, so maybe not something you want to check out for Halloween month?
I don't know. I thought maybe it was a fever dream.
Okay.
It's something I watched like 30 years ago.
Gotcha.
And it was just this like thing in the back of my head. Worst horror movie ever, Pinocchio's Revenge. It's about like, this doll that murders people.
Is it named Pinocchio?
Yeah, it's Pinocchio.
Okay, so it is actually Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it's really bad.
So is it anything like the recent horror movie based on Winnie the Pooh?
I'm sure it's in that vein.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's about like there's just this wooden doll that you see in the corner and then people scream because it's killing people.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's old, so it doesn't have like any special effects. It's just like there's a doll sitting in the corner, let's scream.
And then people die?
I don't really remember the details. I just remember it was horrible. And this is the first time I've ever seen it pop up. So I was kind of excited to see that on his credits. I'm like, oh my goodness, Pinocchio's Revenge.
Gotcha. Okay. So now you know that movie actually exists.
It actually exists. I didn't dream it. I didn't make it up.
All right.
We have another nod to Genesis here with the jukebox playing Viva Falula.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Which is exactly what happens in Genesis the first time that Sam and Al communicate with each other.
Gotcha. All right, so Sam brushes Al's teeth and tells him that he's in deep caca, which is another Genesis reference.
Another Genesis, talking caca.
In comes Commander Riker, played by Charles Rocket. This is his second appearance on the series. The last was in A Little Miracle, which is another episode that we covered. In fact, that was probably one of the first Quantum Leap episodes that we covered together. No, Frank Spontini, no, The Great Spontini was the first one we covered. And then A Little Miracle happened just after that. I remember specifically waiting to do it with you. Riker tells him that he should have slept with Marcy before it became an embarrassment. And he's surprised. Well, he says, oh, you're surprised by that? And he basically knew all about Marcy's activities. Sam tells him that he didn't kill his wife. Riker tells him that of course he did. He watched him do it. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so we have this whole little thing where Sam's like, you watched, like, these things happen to her?
Right.
Like, this doesn't sound good for you.
No. Yeah, he was on the clip and saw the whole scene. Riker thinks it was a game. And Sam says, wow, you're sick. And they say, yeah, we were both sick. Equally perverted equals no perversion, just pleasure.
Which is a very interesting philosophy. And you can understand him a little bit just by that. And you understand his relationship with Marcy. And it was weird and strange, but it worked for both of them.
Right.
And this is the whole point, is now that he's lost her, like they had a thing. They were great. They understood each other. They did not have an unhappy marriage. Even though he beat the crap out of her, which I guess that's another topic. But now that she's gone, suddenly he's a perverted freak.
Right.
He's like, I'm never going to find anyone that loves me the way she did.
Right.
Because without her, what am I?
Right.
It was fine when we had each other. But now, he can't handle who he is, I think, without her.
Yeah, to find somebody who's going to accept that and play along, it's going to be challenging. And it's interesting to note that Al and Riker are actually kind of similar in that they're kind of both perverted human beings. Right. I mean, maybe not to this extent, but Riker intends to send him to the gas chamber by telling the truth. And this is when Al shows up at the end of this. Sam tells him that Riker claimed he saw Al Me Too his wife and then murder her. And the odds have jumped up to 81% chance that he's going to get convicted and die in the gas chamber. And of course, Al at this point is freaking out.
Yeah. Now, I had another question here. Why in the original history did Riker not pursue a conviction? Now, I get they had the alibi. She died. But if he's saying, I am an eyewitness, I saw it happen, why would he not force the issue? Why wouldn't the weight of this commanding officer's eyewitness to his wife being murdered or assaulted at the very least, because I don't think he's saying he saw the murder part.
Right.
Why would that not have carried more weight than the alleged eye of a dead woman who only told it to the lawyer?
Right. I'm not really sure.
To the point where at least we would have pushed for a trial. Like, why did he give up in that history? I get that the military didn't pursue it because of her. When he's so like, I'm going to get you for taking her away from me because I watched it with my own eyes. Maybe
he tried and the military was just like, nah, not happening, because of Lisa's supposed testimony. But again, if you just make that testimony to the lawyer and you're not around to verify it, does it still have the same kind of weight?
I mean, obviously they're saying it did.
Right.
But I would think that would be like, well, nobody's trying to pursue it. But it feels like he should be trying to pursue it based on how he's acting here.
Right.
Now, one thing I had guessed was maybe it's because Al lost his woman in that storyline, in that timeline.
Yes.
So maybe he's like, well, he got punished the same way I got punished.
But Al
because they both died.
Oh, so maybe because he doesn't know now that Lisa died and Lisa connected to Al. That he doesn't have that same rationale.
Right. Like, he felt like Al already had been punished when Lisa died.
That makes sense.
Maybe.
But
I also don't feel like he's capable of that type of compassion.
No, he doesn't really seem like it. But, all right. So, Sam says he's not going to let him die in the gas chamber. He's going to find out who really killed Riker's wife. Al claims to be calm while yelling, and Sam asks him to go talk to Bingo. Maybe there's some thing that he remembers because he was a little closer to events than Al currently. And look at the door. Al initially thinks it's Chip and the guys with booze, but then realizes they're going to tell him about Lisa dying, and he nopes the heck out of there. Al talks to himself in the waiting room. I mentioned again that the actor is dubbed over by Dean Stockwell, and this is really silly. They should just use the normal actor's voice.
Yeah, they should have.
But I mean, it doesn't hurt the episode that much, but it's just it's distracting.
Weird.
Yeah.
That they went out of their way to do it, yet did it poorly.
Yeah. So it's rather curious in the scene that Al pretty much just admits that he's time traveling.
Yeah, he literally tells him the truth. And I get the impression that this is maybe the first time they're doing that, telling
the Leapy
the truth. But also, he's talking to himself, so maybe he feels like that's okay.
And I'm not sure if we brought this up or not, but this is also the first time that we're actually seeing the person in the waiting room.
Right. Which we'll see the waiting room lots and lots in season 5.
Yeah, in season 5 specifically.
And then this is one of those things where you think back and you think we saw it all the time, but we did it for most of the series.
Right, yeah.
We've mentioned it a whole bunch of times. But this is really where we're spending time, like, in this weird room. That I know I've talked about this before, but what a weird choice it is, the way this room is designed.
Right.
It's so bizarre. Like, no wonder people think they're abducted by aliens. They're sitting in this white room on a metal table.
Maybe it's specifically designed so that if the person, like, speaks a bit, they're going to sound crazy. So they
I guess. So Al specifically says that you've switched places in time with Dr. Sam Beckett, and your auras are surrounding each other. And Bingo's following along. He's like, so I'm him and he's me. But who are you?
Right.
Which is funny because I thought he thinks it's his uncle.
Right, yeah.
But at this point, I guess he doesn't think it's his uncle anymore, or he's just trying to humor him, like, okay, well, who are you in this story?
Right.
And Al's just like, you're not ready for that yet.
Right.
Which is funny because if you're ready to tell him all about time travel, why are you not ready to tell him that you're him?
Right, exactly.
But he's like, yeah, you're not ready for that yet. Now, shouldn't Al knowing about the project when he's in his 20s have kind of majorly affected his life? And the future of the project itself?
Maybe, and actually there's one more instance of something that gets changed that should majorly affect Al's life. But yeah, maybe it's just a simple matter of forgetting the project.
Sure, but like, shouldn't they have like told him you can't tell him that?
Right.
Like, this is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you knowing about the project 50 years before you're supposed to.
Right.
It just seems weird.
Yeah.
Like, that should have big ramifications.
It should. And so should how this episode ends,
sure,
by the way.
Right.
But we'll get there. So we cut to Riker testifying that he saw Al kill his wife. He tells his story. And after some testimony, he admits he didn't say anything. He didn't call out or try to stop it because he felt his wife deserved it.
Right. So we have this whole scene where Dobbs, the lawyer, is interrogating Riker, cross-questioning him or whatever. And the whole thing is he watched for a minute or two before attempting to do anything. And, like, why would you do that?
Right.
Like, if you're watching your wife be assaulted, why are you not calling out to her?
Right.
Why are you not intervening in any way? And, once he's like, oh, she deserved it.
Right.
Things look like they're going in Bingo's favor.
Right.
Like, is this guy credible?
Right.
And did he kill his wife?
Right.
Like, his whole testimony is, I watched somebody abuse her, and then they must have killed her while I wasn't looking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't feel very credible, the way he's telling this story.
Well, apparently it is, because basically this is a really devastating testimony, according to Sam. Dobbs ends up saying after they're walking around, they're taking a recess or whatever, that Riker is definitely trying to get him sent to the gas chamber, that they won't trust a rowboat to him after that testimony, but they'll believe him for that very reason.
So basically they're saying he's throwing his career away. Because I guess if you want your wife to get assaulted, you can't be in the military?
I think it more speaks to his state of mind, his mental well-being. Maybe this makes him sound insane, and perhaps that he's not psychologically fit to basically run a rowboat.
Command.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing that's the idea behind that.
So Sam suggests that maybe the reason he's willing to throw his career away is because he's covering for murdering his wife, which seems like a good theory.
Dobbs doesn't think so.
Yeah, Dobbs believes that Riker thinks Al is guilty.
Mm-hmm. And Al appears urgently. Sam asks for a few moments alone, but he mentions that he won't be alone because he's got his little guard. And Sam says, "Oh, that's just my shadow." Sam tells Al quietly that Riker's testimony was devastating, and the odds of Al's conviction are now up to 92% and going up. Sam gets annoyed with Al, but then the odds go up to 100%, and then suddenly it's not Al's voice anymore, but a new hologram. And of course, I think Sam is kind of dumb here, like dumber than he should be. He should know exactly what happened.
Right.
But yeah, so the new hologram is Edward, or St. John, I guess it is.
Edward St. John V, and in his British... He's British, played by Roddy McDowall. And I guess the way you pronounce St. John in British is St. John. So that's the British pronunciation.
Okay.
Is his Edward St. John.
Okay. So,
which has always confused me until recent history.
Gotcha. Yeah, Roddy McDowall, 270 credits for him. Lots of voice work, which, you have to if you're going to have that many credits or be in a soap.
Right.
The first credit is Icy Ice in 1938. He was in 2 episodes of the original Batman series and the original Planet of the Apes movie. He died on October 3rd, 1998 at the age of 70.
And he was in one movie I love, Overboard.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah.
He was like a butler on the boat.
Gotcha.
For the rich people.
That's with Goldie Hawn and Russell.
And Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell,
yeah.
That's right.
So he was like employed by Goldie Hawn's family.
Okay.
In that. And one interesting thing is that Roddy McDowall was very good friends with Dean Stockwell.
Yes.
To the point where this was more of a cameo for him to come and do this than just a regular role.
Gotcha. Too bad they don't get to share scenes together.
And I actually read somebody on Facebook recently posted this. I forget who it was. One of our Facebook Quantum Leap friends. It might have been Deb or somebody in the Facebook groups had posted recently that, that's why I say I don't know the fact. I don't know for a fact this is true, but somebody said it, that Roddy McDowall is actually the person who took that picture of a young Dean Stockwell.
Okay.
That is the picture we use, like at the end of the series. The
Gotcha.
picture that leaps at the end.
Yeah. I know
Of mirror image
about.
that doesn't make any sense why that happens.
Right.
That picture is, and I remember questioning before, was that a picture of Dean Stockwell or was that a picture of Jamie Walters? And it is a picture of Dean Stockwell.
Yes.
When he was actually younger.
Gotcha.
And apparently Roddy McDowall was the person who took that picture of him.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. So Sam doesn't know who he is, and Edward is confused by this because suddenly, mid-weep, he forgets who his hologram
Right,
is.
and he calls him Samuel, by the way, not
Right.
Sam.
Yep.
And I'm not sure I see how these two ever would have ended up working together.
Right. So they don't really seem to, click.
Like, the reason Sam and Al worked together is because they were best friends and designed this project together.
Right. So Sam realizes he's killed Al, which goes back to the advertising that you mentioned
Oh,
last
yes.
week.
Did I send it to you?
No, I don't
I
think you
downloaded
did.
it. I'll send it to you. We got it
Okay.
included in our imagery for this episode.
Ziggy is now Alpha, and Sam wants Bingo interrogated by Al, or by Alpha, rather. Edward objects to this, but ends up agreeing to it. And Riker's testimony continues. He insists he saw Al, that he saw Mercy get into his Corvette. Sam, at night, is visited by Edward. Al was in awe of Pulse Technician Tina, which, by the way, what the heck does that even mean? What kind of position is that?
Yeah, I didn't catch what they said her
It was like
role
Pulse
was.
Communication Tech Tina. I don't know what that is.
Well, we never know what Tina does, right?
Right,
She
yeah.
works there, though, so
Yep.
she's got to have some role.
And it might not even be that role because history has changed at this
Right.
point. And this amuses Sam to no end. Edward reveals that Tina is actually married to Gushy, which you referenced several times during the course of this podcast. Alpha says there's a 72% chance Bingo's car can prove his innocence. So he goes with his shadow to his car, who threatens to shoot him if this is a trick. And I'm really surprised at how much leeway the shadow gives him because Sam's like, I don't even know what I'm looking for.
Right. But also, it's just a guy looking at his own car.
Right.
So, what reason do you have not to let him look at his car?
I guess not.
He's not under room arrest. He's just under watch.
Right.
The guard is played by, and because this is the first time I think he spoke in the episode, Rich Whiteside. He was in Vietnam, Leap Back Vietnam episode.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, wait, he went to Vietnam?
No, he was in
He looks a little
the
young for
episode
that.
of Leap Home Vietnam.
Gotcha.
I didn't know what his role was. I probably didn't recognize it. But
Okay.
he was in there somewhere. He was also a tech advisor on that episode.
Okay. So
And-
he's in the military himself.
Probably is
Okay.
what that means. And, I did write it down. He played a character named Doc.
Oh,
I don't know who Doc is.
okay. Yeah. I can't recall.
He was also in 3 episodes of Jag.
Okay, so he's worked with Belzerio a little bit. He searches around and ends up finding a cigar. And just like that, Al reappears. And Al reacts to this happily. He turns around, his shadow freaks and pulls a gun on him.
And he's like, that's enough. We're going inside now.
Right. Sam tells him that Sam tells him that the odds going down is all due to finding Al's cigar. But it's not Al's cigar at all.
The odds went down all the way to 20%.
And it's because the cigar did not belong to Al, because he didn't start smoking until he went to Vietnam.
Yeah, it must have been this guard's fault.
Right. and it must be Chip's cigar. So Sam talks to Chip, who's clueless as to the problem.
Before we go forward,
okay,
just a couple things from all this I want to bring up. We got a really good look at Bingo's car during this scene. And it's interesting to note that somehow Al managed to keep this car his entire life.
Ah, yes.
Throughout his whole crazy life, all these careers he's had, different moves, he still has this car. Because in the revival, Beth has this car in the current timeline. We see
that's right.
We see Beth working on this car. I mean, it's probably a different car, but it's this car. It's supposed to be Bingo's car that the Calavicis still own in 2022.
Yeah, okay.
Which is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
So if you haven't seen the new series, there's one reason, is you get to see Bingo's car. And also a replica of this car.
Yes.
Used in the series finale.
Yes.
Was that the finale or the episode before?
Was, I'm pretty sure it was the series finale, yeah.
Because they, both episodes were kind of together. It's one of those two episodes.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that was the finale.
Which was a replica that supposedly, at like a battery remote control car that Al had, that looked like this car. The other thing I want to mention is the fact that Tina was married to Gushy in that timeline.
Yes.
In the Al's dead timeline is the reason I have, which we never got told otherwise in the revival series, which is over now. So headcanon exists still.
Yep.
I'm convinced that Gushy and Tina did end up together.
Aww.
In the new history because Al was with Beth. He was never with Tina.
Yep.
So if when Al died, Gushy and Tina got married, logic would follow that they were together in our current timeline as well.
That would be pretty cool. I'm happy for Gushy. So Sam tells him that. Oh yeah, okay. So he's talking to Chip. He doesn't seem to have a clue what the problem is, and it's because Chip didn't have the car, but Chip had it, and Riker saw Chip, not Al. And Al ends up... Okay, so Chip ends up revealing the story. He was in love with Marcy, but she would not sleep with him again. First time, last time. And they have this whole scene where after there was a abusive incident with Riker and Marcy.
Yeah, so it was one of those nights where Riker had beat Marcy up, and he's got Bingo's car. He borrowed it for the night, and he offers Marcy a ride. Now, she's upset at first because she is still trying to sleep with Bingo, because remember, he turned her down. So she's still pursuing him. So she excitedly goes to the car thinking it's Bingo, is disappointed that it's Chip. But Chip says she did end up going with him because he offered her a drink. And she couldn't turn that down.
And, so they end up going to the beach. They end up screwing around.
And based on this little flashback, it was not assault.
No, it seems very much like she was kind of playing hard to get and just playing around.
Right, but she wasn't saying no.
Right.
She was fully compliant with what was happening.
Right. And the death was a complete accident.
It was an accident. She fell and hit her head on a rock.
Right. And he says it was like a black and white film, which is funny because the scene is shot in black and white. And then Sam tells him that he wants to think about this and to give him a moment. And he basically... on the way out the door, Chip says, "I wouldn't let you take the fall for me. I just wouldn't." And Sam says he knows it. Except
he did 5 minutes ago.
He did absolutely let Al go to the gas chamber and die for this murder.
Right.
So I'm sorry, Chip. I don't believe you.
Chip, you're not that great of a friend.
No.
And
yeah. So he comes up with a crazy idea to put Al, the younger one, into the quantum accelerator.
So Sam tells Al, "I know what I'm here to do, not just to save
Chip. Yeah. So he ends up putting young Al into the quantum leap accelerator, sending him back before Marcy died
to Saturday, June 22nd, 1957. So 3 days ago,
with the specific intention of shadowing a Chip and preventing any of this from ever happening.
Right, and he tells him, so we're seeing again Bingo and Al talking. He says, no matter how Swiss cheesed your brain gets, don't let Chip out of your sight until dawn. That's the one fact you have to hold on to. We're pretty lucky that he was able to hold on to that fact.
Right. And so the younger Al asks him, well, would you do this if you were me? And Al says, I am you.
Yeah,
And,
finally reveals that he is him. And Bingo must have believed him because he goes along with this.
Right. And then, so Al appears to Sam, tells him what he did.
And he tells him the leap worked, but they don't know if he landed where he's supposed to land or if he's going to accomplish his mission. Why don't you know that?
Because, I mean, the new Al would be in the waiting room, correct? So why don't you just ask?
So this happened a week ago.
Right.
So how do you not know if it worked?
Right. Yeah. And Al asks him how that would even save Lisa. And Sam points out that if, Marcy doesn't die, then Lisa has no reason to be crying and won't die in that car wreck.
Right.
And then he opens the door. His shadow is gone. And Sam tells him, hey, you did it, buddy. You and Bingo did it. And soon after that, Chip enters, and so does Lisa.
Alive and well.
Yes, and that is where Sam leaps. Now, once again, I'm going to point out what I said earlier, that Lisa being alive and not dying would probably change Al's life pretty significantly, given that they were basically in love.
Right, except she was married. So we
Fair,
have to go with the assumption that because she was married, their relationship never really went anywhere serious.
Right.
That she didn't leave her husband. I mean, that it was the 50s. Mm-hmm. She couldn't really just leave her husband.
Right.
So that's why, he still ended up meeting Beth.
Right.
Very soon after this, I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is 57, and they were together for, 7 or 8 years before 61, so.
Yeah.
I mean, was 71.
Right.
So a couple years from now, he's going to get together with Beth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I want to break down this whole end because this is one of those things that breaks my brain trying to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, so we saw in the leap back, they know how to target a leap.
Yes.
I'm with it so far. They took him and they leaped him into himself.
Okay.
Early.
Mm-hmm.
Before the sleep. I get it. But if Bingo leaps into 1 week younger Bingo, but he leapt from Sam's body or aura or whatever. Kind of like how in the revival, and I'm not going to get into that discussion because then my mind will really break, but kind of like in the revival, how
I don't even want to think about that.
We had a leap within a leap. Somebody who was in Magic's body,
right,
leapt, and that person died, but Magic didn't die.
Right, but the other person in the same situation who
died,
stayed dead,
even though we reset history. Okay,
yeah.
So it's a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Where he didn't really leap. Sam leapt again. Because it was Sam's aura, but not body in this case.
Mm. All right, so okay, so all right, so
but Sam is still in Bingo Prime's place.
Right.
This didn't affect his leap.
Right. So perhaps Al stayed in his body. Okay. So the Al that leapt back stayed there. He never leaped again. Sam...
So you're saying he replaced himself and
yes.
relived a week of his life.
Yes, and then Sam replaces him.
Okay, but when you leap, you don't replace somebody and live out their life. Sam has leapt into himself before.
Right. Except perhaps in this case, maybe it was just... I don't know. I don't know. So the question is, why didn't...
Sam is still where he was a week, or it's not a full week, but a few days later.
Yep.
And history changed around Sam.
Right.
Right? So that Marcy and Lisa are still both alive. So before Sam leaps again, who's in the waiting room?
It would be...
It would be the younger Bingo, who's here for the first time?
No. Because, okay, if Al stayed put and lived that week again, and he was still there, Sam would replace him, and he would end up back in the waiting room. So the Bingo that leaped back in time lived out that week, still in that time frame. Sam replaces him, so he ends up back in the waiting room again.
Okay, but in this moment when they leaped him out and he's standing in the accelerator chamber and they're like, "Oh, it worked." Who is here?
The old Bingo, the older Bingo.
So he's just like, "Nothing happened. I'm still here."
Yeah, I don't know. Well, okay, so he weeps, and okay, so he weeps. So the older Bingo, the one that was from the prior to Sam arriving, would have ended up in the waiting room, but then Sam weeps into the Bingo that was left back, and then
there's too many Bingos.
Right.
There's an extra essence here.
Yeah.
So basically, Bingo leaping into himself just reset him in time.
Yeah.
But why and how? Because, like I said, Sam slept into himself before.
Mm-hmm.
Sam and Al have leapt, like they did their cross-leapy thing before.
Right.
And that's not how it works. They don't just reset themselves.
Right.
They take each other's places.
Well, okay, so Sam does not replace the new Bingo. He's replacing the old Bingo because he's the one who's just back there in 1957 now. And so he ends up in the waiting room. And then when Sam weeps, he gets replaced by the new host, which is Lee Harvey Oswald. That Bingo goes back to the time that Sam came from. And he doesn't continue weeping because the powers that be don't want that to happen. They don't want Bingo to keep leaping around in time.
It would suggest that Bingo B...
Yes, Bingo B.
The second Bingo.
Uh-huh.
Leaped out when Bingo A returned to his altered timeline. And then Bingo B should still be leaping.
Okay.
Because there's no one in the waiting room for him to swap with.
All right, so...
I know this theory exists, that there's a version of Al just leaping around in time.
Yeah.
Because they, made an extra leaper.
All right, so Bingo A. He's the original one that lived through these events. Sam replaces him. He ends up in the waiting room. He leaps back into Bingo B. Bingo B ends up in the waiting room. Bingo A continues to live this week. Sam replaces him. Bingo A ends up in the waiting room.
And then where's Bingo B go?
Okay, that's what
at some point,
yeah.
he just merged into one person again.
Right.
Is what they're going with.
Right.
But that's not consistent with anything we've ever learned about leaping.
Right.
And how hosts work.
Mm-hmm.
So it just doesn't fit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I get that. And I remember when I first watched this episode with my husband, he was convinced, oh, there's an Al out there somewhere leaping. And maybe there is. Maybe he's leaping Strappa style.
Maybe.
Maybe there's a Bingo that literally just leapt his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Because he got lost in time trying to save himself.
Right.
Or save, Lisa and this whole thing.
Right, yeah.
And here's my biggest question. Does Al not remember any of this?
Which Al?
Like grown-up Al.
Okay.
Does he not now have new memories of, I leaped when I was a kid, and I knew about time travel my whole life, and I've been in the waiting room and the accelerator chamber, and I lived out these multiple timelines, and I lived this week twice.
Maybe not yet, because he is... Well, I mean, we've seen evidence before that this Al, old Al, whatever Al... is not affected by time changes.
But this is literally his life. His life would have changed.
Yeah.
His knowledge throughout his entire life would have changed.
Yeah.
And we never mention this again.
Yeah. I'm ready to stop thinking about this before my brain blows up. But yeah. I can't. I don't have an answer for that.
All right. Let me shout out the other actors we didn't mention yet. Marcy Rikers, played by Debbie James. She was a 1990 Star Search winner. She was a Miss USA finalist.
Okay.
And she was in one episode of Melrose Place and 20 episodes of Days of Our Lives. The judge is played by Anthony Peck.
Yes.
He was in Die Hard with a Vengeance, Last Action Hero, 28 episodes of Days of Our Lives. A lot of soap people end up in Quantum Leap, I've been noticing recently.
Yeah.
And Pollock, I don't know who that is. Is that a character's name? Is that a position within the military?
I don't remember.
Pollock, I'm not sure, but Pollock was Steve Carlisle. who was in 13 episodes of Days of Our Lives.
All right.
And that's everybody.
So the next Quantum Leap episode we're going to talk about is the episode that I can't name, even though
The Halloween episode.
Yes,
which, funny story, you mentioned it earlier in this podcast.
I did.
And we did, folks, have technical difficulty in the middle of this podcast.
That is crazy. Like,
literally, we're not making this up. This recording stopped, and we had to restart at some point.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we noticed it quickly and didn't have to, like, repeat a whole hour like we've had to do in some other cases. But, yeah, we had technical difficulties while recording this.
Yeah, it was weird. It just, like, stopped recording and then resumed recording. And the fact that it resumed recording is the only reason I even noticed it. I just suddenly noticed it, like, it flashed on my screen and was, like, flashing up from, like, a couple of seconds. And I'm like, what the heck? So, yeah. So
don't say the name of the episode.
All right, so we're covering that episode the next time we talk, which will be on October 31st. Sometime November, December, January, we'll start the 5th season with the
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Lee Harvey Oswald.
So, here's a thought. Maybe the craziness of two bingos leaping and an extra person, and they kind of broke the rhythm here, is why Sam's next leap is a crazy one where he leaps 6 times.
Yeah. Was it only 6 times?
However many times he leapt within that leap. Sam leaps into Lee Harvey Oswald like a bunch of times throughout his life. I'm
hesitant to give too much away about my opinion of that episode. I will say...
what do you think of that?
That
they kind of broke it, and that's why we have a crazy leap next.
Maybe. Perhaps that's why. I would say that I've watched that episode a number of times over the years. And I've had a different reaction to it every single time. I know of some problems I had with the episode, particularly the ending. I'm not going to say too much about any of that now.
Well, about the fact that it says we're not in our world.
Yeah.
It cements the fact that their world is not our world.
Except that it kind of does, because it does line up with our history. Oh, wait.
It's saying that we live in the world that Sam has already changed.
Yes.
That's where we live.
Right.
If we live in anywhere comparable.
Yeah, and I'm very interested in having that conversation with you about that.
Eventually we will.
I'm very curious to see, because we don't usually sharply divide on things that much. If we do, it's by a little bit here and there, a little bit there. We don't usually have drastic different opinions on episodes. And I'm very curious how I'm going to react to this episode when I watch it again. I already know I do have some major problems with the episode. But I'm kind of curious about, like, oh, that's pretty good now, watching it now, or if I'm going to have a different reaction, because I've had like 6 or 7 different reactions watching it over the years. It's a very controversial episode, I should point out.
Yeah, it's one of the first times that we're really diving into real history. Mm-hmm. And then we change the history, which is like a twist. But season 5, I'll just say this, season 5 is where things just kind of go in every direction possible. And
I have a new question. Like, now the question for this podcast is, does this hold up upon rewatch? Does it get worse? Does it get better? The new question is it worth it? Is Sam leaping into this famous person worth the story they're telling? Because there's only so much you can do with that, particularly if you're leaping into someone who is a famous person who died. Mm-hmm. You can't change it so that they live.
Right.
So is the story that you're telling worth it?
Right. And we'll do that multiple times in season 5.
We will. So that's a new question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And season 5, we're going to break all the rules that haven't already been broken. It's a lot of the episodes of season 5 are some of my favorite episodes, including my very favorite episodes. There
are a lot of people out there who do not like season 5. I've never been one of them. I enjoy season 5 quite a bit. There aren't that many like bad episodes. There's nothing like Hurricane, which is a complete mess of an episode in season 5. I don't think
there are episodes that people have strong opinions about.
Yes.
I'll say that in both directions.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to eventually resuming that conversation.
It's not Sliders.
Oh yeah. See, I've made this argument a number of times over the years that, unlike a show like Sliders, Quantum Leap never goes completely off the rails.
Yeah. I love season 5.
It remains a good show.
Yeah.
Consistently throughout. Sliders 2.5 seasons, and it just goes completely off the rails.
And there's plenty of shows where that's the case, where the last season or two are unwatchable. And that's not the case with Quantum Leap.
Right.
There's some episodes that some people aren't going to like.
Right.
They do break the rules. They do change things. They do make that horrible theme song that I'm going to pretend doesn't exist. But in general, it still remains an amazing show.
Yeah.
It doesn't lose it just because they did some weird gimmicky stuff trying, to save the show.
Yep. And I think that about does it. Do you have anything else to say?
Just thank you, everybody who has been hanging out with us talking about Quantum Leap. And I hope you check out some of the other series as we cover, because as we talked about at the top, we got a lot going on in October, November. And if you don't check out those things, then we look forward to checking in with you again when we get to season 5.
Yes. All right. Stacie can be reached at?
I can be reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
All right. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy. You can join the Core Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell so you're notified when new content drops. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.